A new report from the Labor Department says unemployment last month fell to 3.7%, the lowest since 1969. Employers added 134,000 jobs. The head of Interpol is missing. The wife of Interpol President Meng Hongwei says he left for a trip to China several days ago, and she hasn't heard from him since. Police in Tennessee are continuing the search for a man wanted in a string of violent crimes, including a pair of murders. They think he's near Nashville. Hundreds of dead fish have washed up on the beaches of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Officials think a red tide full of toxic algae has shown up off the coast of Broward County.
Ben and Jackie Belknap are hardcore University of Utah football fans. After saving for a year, they finally had enough money in cash to pay back family members for season tickets. But one tiny problem, it disappeared. And when they found the $1,060, it wasn't intact anymore because her 2-year-old son, Leo, had gotten a hold of it first and put it in the shredder. And now that grand in cash is in many tiny pieces.
And in Sweden, a moment right out of the Arthurian legend. An 8-year-old Minnesota girl going for a swim, rising up like the Lady of the Lake.
Welcome to Fox News Live. Welcome to ABC News Live. I'm Diane Macedo. We're going to start things off with the Supreme Court confirmation battle. The Senate has just voted to end debate on the nomination of Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, and that means we could be seeing a full Senate vote on his nomination as early as tomorrow afternoon. Kavanaugh himself made his final case for his nomination in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, and we've got Stephanie Ramos on Capitol Hill and Terry Moran at the Supreme Court. Team coverage this morning on all of this. Stephanie, I want to start with you. Just sort of walk us through what just happened and what happens next.
Absolutely. So this is a very significant time here in the Senate. Of course, Republican leaders are confident that Judge Brett Kavanaugh will be confirmed as a Supreme Court justice, despite the sexual assault allegations made against him. While Senate Democrats, they're still fuming. They're still upset about this latest FBI investigation, calling it extremely limited by the White House, and also questioning Kavanaugh's temperament. We heard it just a few moments ago on the Senate floor, which just a few moments ago, they passed that procedural vote to move forward, to take this process forward and vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh. So that will likely happen Saturday at some point. Diane.
Terry, this vote was 51-49. That is incredibly close. Is this a foreshadowing of what's to come tomorrow, and what does that tell you?
It probably is a foreshadowing, Diane, that the Senate has now expressed its opinion that this should go to a vote, and unless two of those votes switch sides, unless Joe Manchin said, I voted to have a final vote, but now I'm going to take it back when it comes to confirming them, or Susan Collins does the same thing, Judge Kavanaugh is going to be Justice Kavanaugh here. And what that means is that this court is now right in the midst of the partisan wars that we've been living through for the past couple of years. And that's not good for the court. The court has no way of enforcing its opinions aside from the respect and legitimacy that it has in the minds of all Americans. And it tends not to like to be in politics. But right now, look, I mean, Republicans might want to rename this building the Mitch McConnell Federal Courthouse. I mean, if you think about it, through his from a tactical standpoint, brilliant Senate maneuvering. He kept Merrick Garland off this court. Now he's got Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh up there, and perhaps more to come. So the court right now, and I'm sure Chief Justice John Roberts has this on his mind, will want to insulate itself from the chaos and the partisan battles that are happening around it as Judge Kavanaugh becomes Justice Kavanaugh, if that's what we see tomorrow.
Yeah, I know justices normally steer away from media and the spotlight, but so many, so curious to know what the justices think of all of this. But on that note, you know, we saw Brett Kavanaugh give an interview. We saw his wife give an interview. And just yesterday, we saw this op-ed where he's essentially making his case for nomination. Terry, how unusual is that?
Well, it's extraordinary. I don't think anybody can remember when a judge, a nominee on the verge of a Senate vote publicly campaigned for his confirmation. But, you know, in this story, as we have all experienced on both sides, all those old rules and traditions were tossed out. We've never seen the Senate dig into somebody's high school years either to find things that might tend towards a vote against a nominee. And I think that the Republicans and the Democrats have both thought all gloves were off, and Kavanaugh thought so too. He got in the arena himself, as you point out, to fight for his own confirmation. I think that will once again give some Americans, perhaps some justices, a concern about this court getting dragged deep into this partisan moment. And justices, the Chief Justice in particular, will look for ways to pull the court back from that in the kinds of cases it agrees to take, in the ways it rules on, maybe just to lower the temperature around this place to preserve that respect and legitimacy as best they can.
And Stephanie, in terms of the Senate, there are sort of four big names here: Susan Collins, a Republican; Lisa Murkowski, a Republican; Jeff Flake, a Republican; and Joe Manchin. Those seem to be the undecideds. Most went along party lines, but you saw Joe Manchin vote in favor of ending debate, and Lisa Murkowski, the Republican, voting no. And we understand they got quite a reception on the Hill this morning.
Oh, absolutely, Diane. And I'm not sure if you could hear, but there are so many demonstrators here in the building right now, in the Russell Senate building. But going back to that moment, absolutely, Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Lisa Murkowski, they broke party ranks on this key vote for Judge Kavanaugh, with Manchin voting to advance a nomination, with Lisa Murkowski voting to block it. That was huge and was unexpected. Both of them, Lisa Murkowski and Senator Susan Collins, were actually greeted like celebrities by lawmakers from both sides of the aisle. Again, these are key critical swing votes. We've been watching them for the last week or so. Yesterday, we heard from Senator Susan Collins and Senator Jeff Flake. Both seemed satisfied with the FBI report, which kind of led many people to speculate how they would vote today and how they would vote tomorrow. But even though Judge Kavanaugh passed that cloture vote today, the decision as to whether he will be confirmed tomorrow, that is still uncertain.
All right. And Terry, one last question. You know, on that note, sort of these senators get so much attention for being the swing vote. We have elections just around the corner. A lot of people are saying this whole thing has really revved up the Republican base. How do you think this all plays out politically?
Well, that certainly seems to be the case. This was going into the Kavanaugh nomination. The polls showed that Republicans were much less enthusiastic about voting in the midterms than Democrats. That's turned around, and so we now have an all-out nationalized election. Kavanaugh's nomination and possible confirmation would be an important part of that. I just want to say one thing, though, a silver lining to all this, which is being up here the past few days to see so many protesters taking their voices, making their case, survivors of sexual assault, bravely coming forward to tell their stories, supporters of Judge Kavanaugh talking about how they thought he'd been treating unfairly, directly to United States senators. You know, that's the way it's supposed to work. At the end of the day, one side is going to win, one side is going to lose. But the direct democracy that you felt up here has been really remarkable, really inspiring.
All right, something to take in there. Terry Moran for us from the Supreme Court, Stephanie Ramos from Capitol Hill. Thank you both. And now let's go over to Chicago, where we are awaiting a verdict in the trial of Officer Jason Van Dyke, who's charged with murder in the shooting death of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald. The case is now in the hands of the jury, and ABC's Alex Perez is there outside the courtroom. Alex, what's the latest on all this?
Hey there, Diane. Yeah, jurors just resumed their deliberations here at the Cook County Courthouse just a few minutes ago. They deliberated yesterday for about 5 hours. As you mentioned, they are weighing the fate of Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke. He's charged with first-degree murder, but they could consider a lesser charge of second-degree murder. Now, Van Dyke is charged with killing 17-year-old Laquan McDonald. The entire incident captured in that now infamous police dash cam video. You see Van Dyke shoot McDonald 16 times. McDonald had a 3-inch knife in his hand. Van Dyke argues that he repeatedly told McDonald to drop that knife and he ignored those commands and that he lunged at him. Now, let's take a quick listen. But if you look at the video, I should say, if you look at it closely, it appears that McDonald is walking away from Van Dyke when he is shot. Now, I want you to take a quick listen to the closing arguments and how the prosecution and the defense made their case to the jury.
This case has been about exaggerating the threat and trying to hide behind the police shield. Why? because there's no justification for shooting Ron McDonald that night. Not one shot. Not the first shot, not the 16th shot.
We have to look at this from Jason Van Dyke's perspective. Probable guilt is not enough. The video is not enough.
Now, when that video was released about 3 years ago, it sparked weeks of protests, and of course, officials here now are preparing for anything, any decision in that verdict, in that jury room. They say the police department here, all 12,000 officers, are standing by, ready to react to whatever it is the jurors decide. But at this point, it's a big game of waiting, Diane. The jury in there just a few minutes ago, and we're all here standing by.
And Alex, is there any sense of how long it might take? Have they asked for anything that might offer any clues on that front?
You know, everyone's trying to pay attention to every little detail, and at this point, we really don't have any idea just where they are in the deliberation process. They've asked one question. They wanted to see testimony from Jason Van Dyke's partner who testified during the trial. We do know that if they do not reach a decision by the end of the day today, they will be sequestered, and the judge says they will work through the weekend until they are able to reach a decision. Diane?
All right, Alex Perez from Chicago. Alex, thanks. From violence to peace now, the winners of the Nobel Peace Prize have just been announced, and Julia McFarlane is in London for us, covering the details on that. Julia?
Hey, Diane. Yes, two incredible individuals being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, jointly awarded. They are the 25-year-old Yazidi survivor Nadia Murad and the 63-year-old Congolese gynecologist Denis Mukwege. Now, they have been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their tireless efforts to end the use of sexual violence in war. So just a little bit about these two incredible people. Nadia Murad, she is a Yazidi refugee. She lost her mother when ISIS took over northern Iraq and took thousands of Yazidis as slaves and overran northern Iraq back in 2014. She dedicated her half of the award to her mother in her memory and in memory of all Yazidis who are still trying to rebuild their lives after the invasion of northern Iraq by ISIS. And the Congolese doctor Denis Mukwege, he has been, his team have saved and have treated tens of thousands of people. And he was actually in a hospital when he was first informed that he'd won the prize. He was carrying on his work when he was told, people sort of interrupted him while he was working and told him the good news.
Two great stories and two amazing people. It's so great to hear them honored. It's funny that he didn't know and that's how he ended up finding out. Usually they get some sort of secret phone call with a whole team of people behind them.
Yeah, I mean, the nominations can be out for a number of months, but I think it says a lot to his dedication that he carried on with his work today. But he was told by people who'd heard the news, but he was at work, which I think says a lot about who he is. He treated his first victim of sexual violence back in 1999, and he's been in the DRC treating women ever since, and he has told some really harrowing stories about the gross mistreatment that women have faced in that conflict. And so really, this is a wonderful day for him and for all campaigners who want to end sexual violence and conflict. But the background to this is literally decades of this largely unknown man working away in one of the most violent conflicts in the world.
Well, hopefully these prizes offer, obviously, them the credit that they deserve and offer some extra confidence to victims and other survivors, as well as people looking to help. Julia McFarlane from London. Thanks, Julia.
Thanks, Dan.
And finally, let's take a look at our weather forecast with the weekend coming up. Ginger, does she have any good news for us? Let's see.
Diane, thank you. Let's dive straight into the pictures because it really shows us what could happen in other areas this weekend. That's a typical flash flood. This one in the Pittsburgh area in Pennsylvania. Really only an inch of rain in an hour can do this type of damage. So keep that in mind as you look at the next map. And that's for, say, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, or Rockford, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, and Madison, Wisconsin, a place that's had almost 15 inches above where they usually are this time of year as far as rainfall goes. So they're getting a whole lot more going into this weekend. Not just plus Madison, Wisconsin. But back with the severe storms on Saturday afternoon, evening, and even early overnight. You can see some of the Woodward, Oklahoma through Wichita. The damaging winds could be a big threat there, and also large hail. This setup looks extremely wet too for areas that have been so saturated down in western Oklahoma or northern Texas, where you could pick up 8 inches of rain total. That's a lot, more than a half foot of rain. Now I want to take you to the northern plains though, because this is the frozen precipitation. So 2 to 3 inches. This is southeast of Devil's Lake, North Dakota, just west of Grand Forks, where we picked up just a dusting to 3 inches. But there's more where that came from. Winter weather advisories in place there, and some serious freeze warnings. So we're starting to get into what October should feel like, and it should feel like a half foot of snow in the Black Hills in some places. Rapid City there, east of or north of Cheyenne could pick up some of the heavier too. And of course, in northern Colorado. It's all starting, Diane.
Half a foot of snow. All right, well, enjoy that, Black Hills. We also want to just remind you that we are going to have a 1-hour primetime special. Being Melania, the First Lady airs tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. Tom Yamas is sitting down with the First Lady. You don't want to miss that. Also, tomorrow we will have the Kavanaugh vote live here on ABC News Live. You don't want to miss that. And remember, you can check your headlines all day long at abcnews.com or at your ABC News app. For ABC News Live, I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great Friday.